Welcome back, YouTube. Welcome back, YouTube fam. Welcome back to our 10th edition. 10th episode, is it now?
Yep, 1.10.
1.10, Season 1, Chapter 10 of this series that we have going on. If you don't know already, I'm Genaro. That's Duran.
What's up?
We're going to be doing this podcast today about our favorite draft picks in the past 3 years. I know if you weren't with us last series, we went over our favorite offseason transactions. We're regarding the best additions, the best draft picks in 2020, as well as the biggest losses for each individual team. So today we're covering our favorite draft choices in the past 3 years, going back to 2017, 2018, and 2019 drafts. Then we'll be starting off with the AFC East, which includes the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, New England Patriots, and the New York Football Jets. But before we get started, Duran, you said you got some news to kind of share with us?
Yeah, we've been off about 2 weeks now, and the news, of course, in the NFL just doesn't stop. So just wanted to touch bases on a couple of these things. One of the biggest ones to me was all these teams that have been tested positive for COVID with their players. And it looks like we're up to 6 teams so far. Houston, Denver, Tampa Bay, the Steelers, the Niners, and the Cowboys all have at least one player test positive. And, it's just not a good sign right now, especially because these guys aren't even meeting up or together yet. So, as we saw this week as well, the Hall of Fame game has already been canceled. So we're inching closer to the season, and it's not looking good.
Yeah, that's I was just gonna say the Hall of Fame game has been canceled, which is super weird because I love that. That was like the first taste of actual team versus team besides joint practices. But yeah, that's weird. And they haven't told us anything other than certain people, players, coaches, training staff. They don't tell us which people have it besides Zeke and who else did you say?
Kareem Jackson for Denver.
Kareem Jackson. But they also haven't told us if they're asymptomatic or if they're showing symptoms or whatnot. I know this isn't football related, but I just got an update on my phone saying that Rudy Goddard, the center for the Jazz, is still having trouble spelling after 3 months.
I even heard Zeke said he hasn't been able to do any cardio the last 2 weeks just because of breathing wise. He's having trouble out there. Have you seen any of the things that they're trying to introduce to maybe fight this, like the full face mask, the visors that go all the way down? Have you seen that?
I kind of saw that when we were at Fog Belt local brewery here in Santa Rosa on Friday. You kind of mentioned that, and we got to look it up, and I see it looks just like an Air Force helmet, like something they do when they're flying jets and whatnot, which is pretty futuristic. But at the same time, I feel like it'd be hard to breathe. I mean, I know during my amateur days of playing football, it was hard for me to breathe with like a pacifier mouth, and that's supposed to make it easier for to breathe. So it'd be a little bit harder for them, and especially with the whole concussion factor going on too. So I know they have to do a test run with those. So we'll definitely see.
Breathing, spitting, drinking water, all the stuff that you do just during a football game is just going to make it that much more difficult. Might even be a little counterproductive. One other thing that I did see is they're contemplating putting microphones in every helmet, kind of like the XFL did, so that when to prevent huddles, so when the coach calls in a play, it doesn't have to relay through the quarterback or the linebacker, and could just go to every player.
Now, I wonder if it's going to be like the quarterback helmet, you know what I mean? So it's going to be like, what if they need an audible? I wonder how trouble they're going to have with hearing as far as, the new helmets go.
Yeah, I'm assuming they'll still have that time limit, so the audibles will have to be by yelling or hand signals or whatever. But I kind of like that. I think it'll speed up the pace of the game. Let those wide receivers stay out of the huddle, and they don't have to run back every time. Same with the DBs and stuff. So I kind
It
of
might
like
be
that
like
one.
college, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know how they hold up those cards? I know Oregon holds up cards with like random
Yep.
pictures on it, and they know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So, I wonder if it's going to be like that. That'd be pretty crazy. I know, Oregon kind of started off with the Chip Kelly era doing that. So, we'll see how that goes. But
Yeah.
yeah.
You either love it or you hate it. So some coaches might adapt to it, and some might say no way. So
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty crazy. I know that a lot of the 49ers are out there in Nashville, and actually, like you said, they're one of the teams that have contracted the virus.
yep.
But they so far it's only been one person, and that person has yet to be named. I know they're out there in Nashville. They call it Camp Jimmy out there. They used to do it over here at San Jose State, but they've been doing it out in Nashville. So they have George Kittle out there, Trent Taylor, C.J. Beathard, Nick Mullins, Brock Ritter, Jimmy G, of course, uh, Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, all the receivers out there. Even Brandon Ayuk got out there, got to play around out there. If you follow Kendrick Bourne's YouTube channel, it's pretty interesting. Pretty excited to see him train. He actually trains with a friend of mine, so it's pretty fun to see him and just kind of interact with his teammates out there. So he's got a great personality. So, but yeah, got anything else to share with us before we get the show started?
Just the two injury things. We got Brandon Brooks, the guard from Philly. He tore his Achilles, and that's going to be a big loss. PFF ranked him as the number one guard in the league last year. So not only that, this line has just taken a big hit over the past season. They've lost 3 of their starters. I know Big V started a little bit last year, but of course Jason Peters and now Brooks, and this was definitely one of the top lines in the NFL, and it's going to be hard to replace. I think they got Dillard coming in to play tackle to fill in for Peters, and we'll see who they got coming in for Brooks, but I think that one's going to be damn near impossible to replace.
Yeah, and I know people might say I'm a little bit of a homer, but the Niners actually got 2 injuries. I mean, if you count the COVID positive being an injury, but they also Deebo Samuel went down with the Jones fracture, which is
Yep.
a break in your foot metatarsal, and then Richie James fractured his wrist. I know that's a big one
Yep.
for the 49ers. Looking into it, it shows that 50% are able to come back fully healthy, fully good to go. Some people have been saying that Trent Taylor missed the whole season last year, but Trent Taylor did have some infections in his foot, and he had to get 5 surgeries on his foot. So hopefully that's not the case for Deebo. He seems optimistic about it. A lot of people are optimistic after an injury, but we'll see. We'll see how
Yeah.
it goes. Hopefully, people stood up and looking into it. I know we talked about it a little bit. You were saying that Brandon Ayuk might be the next person up there, and looking further into it, seeing the type of guy he is, yeah, he definitely is. I know that Shanahan needs to see it first, so he needs to kind of trust him a little bit more. So
Yeah. I
we'll
mean,
see.
with that type of injury, I'm not as optimistic as Deebo, especially for wide receivers that are always cutting, changing direction, and putting a lot of pressure on the outside of that foot. The wide receivers that have had the same exact injury that have failed to come back that year or have re-broke their foot include Dez Bryant, Greg Olsen, who's a tight end, Julio Jones, Sammy Watkins, and it's just a tough one, especially on that little bone on the outside of the foot. So I think Debo's the best receiver on the Niners, and that'll be a hard one to replace.
Definitely. Well, enough with the injuries, enough with the kind of news to start off. So let's get into it. So we're today,
Yeah.
like I said, we're going over our favorite draft picks in the past 3 years. A little quick background, but for me and Duran, we follow Dane Brugler, the Draft Network, while Kyle Krabs, Joe Moreno, and Ben Solak, everybody over there. We follow a lot of guys, Matt Miller at Bleach Report as well. And we kind of do our own thing. We kind of do our own scouting, a little amateur at it, kind of getting our feet wet a little bit. But we rely heavily on Dane Brugler and the beast that goes
Yeah.
out. So a lot
Don't
of
forget Gil Brandt, the OG.
the OG, the Hall of Famer Gil Brandt. How can I
Yep.
forget? Still would love to have a conversation with him one day. Listen to his breakdowns is amazing. The man responsible for drafting Larry Allen, that's crazy. But
Yeah.
But yeah, so we like I said, we've been doing this for quite some time, breaking down. So before actually 2017, but we said we're gonna go over our favorite draft picks three in the past 3 years, including 17, 18, and 19. So again, to get started, we're gonna go with the AFC East, and we're gonna start with the Buffalo Bills. And I'll go ahead, if you don't mind. I'll just go ahead and kick it off.
Go right ahead.
All right, so I had a couple of honorable mentions here. For the Buffalo Bills in 2017, I would say me and you both were high on Zay Jones round two. We've got to first get to see him at the Senior Bowl. That's when we got to see this East Carolina kid just come out. His crisp route runnings, and even in the game, catching the touchdown or two, he just looked incredible. Looked amazing. In 2018. The physical freak, the young kid out of Virginia Tech was Tremaine Edmonds, round one. That man, I honestly thought that the 49ers were going to draft him because they had a pre-visit interview with him, and they said that everything looked good, everything went well. That kid was just a physical specimen, and he's still getting his feet wet in the game today. I think he's going to turn into one of the best linebackers that the Buffalo Bills actually have had in a long, long time. But overall, I would say my favorite draft pick came in the 2019 draft, and that was defensive tackle Ed Oliver. He was my number one defensive tackle coming into the draft. A lot of people had Quentin Williams, or I've seen somebody even have Christian Wilkins. I actually had Ed Oliver over both of those guys. He was a great standout athlete over there at Houston, stayed home, stayed local. His junior year, I know he got into a couple of beef with the coaching staff over there, which was ridiculous because the coach was, reaching for his jacket, telling him to take off his jacket, and got a little arguments over there, which I thought was hilarious. But his junior year, he had 29 solo tackles and 25 assisted tackles, which brings him to 54 tackles total. 14 and a half of those tackles were for losses. He had 3 sacks. He had 2 pass deflections, and he also had a forced fumble as well. He didn't work out at the combine, but his pre-draft measurables, he was about 6'2", 287. He had 31 and a 3/4 inch arms. His hand size was 9 1/4. And yeah, this kid was a beast. He was my favorite overall player. So
yeah, I had Ed Oliver as my number 3 ranked that year. I wasn't too impressed with his stats. He didn't produce as much as some of the other guys there. But, yeah, he was ACC Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time All-American. A couple of the notes that I have on him is he was very good at shooting the gap, powerful at his get-off, and with a nice bull rush. So those are the top headlines that I had on there. The things that I think he needed to work on were he was a little bit undersized with short arms, so that's probably why he's kicked inside a lot of the time. But his hand technique, and he needs to develop his body a little bit more. I felt like he was more of a high motor guy over skill. So I liked Oliver. The 2 guys I had above him that year were Quentin Williams and Jeffrey Simmons.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons, I had to knock down a little bit that year only because he did have that injury. But, yeah, he definitely is working out well for the Tennessee Titans.
Yep. So that was your number 1. My number 1, I went with 2017 first-round pick, Tre'Davious White. I had him as a second-rounder, and he was picked as the number 27 overall player. And, it's pretty much a second-rounder. At LSU, he was a 4-year starter. He was physical, played the slot and outside. He was instinctive. He led the nation, or he was number 7 in the nation in deflected passes. He was known for his good character. He was a smart player and a team captain. And that's all the things that I look for pretty much when I'm looking at these DBs. Getting your hand on the ball, being smart, and being a leader. A couple things that made me drop him from the first round to the second was he was a little bit too handsy downfield. He'd get those flags thrown on him on those deep routes, and his testing at the combine wasn't as good as you want to see for cornerbacks. You want those guys to have high spark scores and run the fastest, but he was right there in the middle of the pack, so I didn't really think he deserved to be a first-round pick. He might have proved me wrong his rookie year. I mean, he had a great rookie year. was probably the best rookie DB. And his second year, he kind of dropped off a little bit, kind of came back down to earth. But I think overall, I had him in the right spot. He was probably one of the best second rounders taken in that draft.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
My honorable mention, as you said before, Zay Jones out of East Carolina. He was taken in the second round in that same draft, 2017. And I just think so far I've been kind of fooled by Zay Jones. I also had him in the second round. I kind of validate his grade because he was a 4-year starter. He had great production, over 400 catches and 4,300 yards in his career in college. So I also liked his route running. His route tree was very extensive. It wasn't limited at all. And the same thing, he played inside, outside. I just thought it'd be a smooth transition to the NFL, but he just hasn't really lived up to that pick. And I don't know if it was the competition because he played at East Carolina. That's the first note I have in his negative side is he has weak competition. So I know he's had a off-field incident or two, and now he's traded. He's on the Raiders, so that's definitely why he didn't make it as my favorite pick. But hopefully he could revamp his career in Vegas.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Hopefully he does so.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us next to our next team, the Miami Dolphins. I had a couple of honorable mentions before I get to my favorite for the past 3 years. Starting off with 2018. Actually, he pushed it really, really hard for me to kind of put him as my favorite, but he's not with the team. And that's, Mika Fitzpatrick, the safety out of Alabama. I also really liked the linebacker that they chose in the third round that year as well from Ohio State, Jerome Baker. I liked him a lot. 2017, I wasn't really high on anybody pre-draft.
Mm-hmm.
I know, afterwards I got to see what kind of a stud Raekwon McMillan was, but to be totally honest with you, I wasn't as high as him pre-draft. So,
Yep.
But overall, my favorite draft pick in the past 3 years for them was their 2019 round 1 draft choice, the number 13th pick overall, and that's defensive tackle Christian Wilkins coming out of Clemson. 2019, he was actually the third defensive tackle chosen. Obviously, the Jets went ahead and took Quinton Williams, and then, like I spoke for about the Buffalo Bills, they went ahead and got Ed Oliver, and with the 13th pick, Christian Wilkins came off the board. He was part of that Power Ranger squad defensive line that they call themselves. Later on, the 4 picks later, his teammate Dexter Lawrence was picked up by the New York Jets. But I was a big fan of Christian Wilkins coming out, being part of that national championship team. In 2018, his senior year, he had 25 solo tackles, 26 tackles total, which is 51. And then he had 14 of those tackles were for losses. He had 5.5 sacks, which is pretty solid as an interior rusher. And then he had 2 pass deflections and 2 fumble recoveries, and he had 1 forced fumble on his own. So
yeah,
he was my favorite.
He actually had better stats in every category than Ed Oliver, who we mentioned in the last one. That's from sacks, hits, hurries, pressure. So in every category, he did pretty much way better than Ed Oliver. So he was high on my list too.
Yeah, for sure. What about you? Who's your favorite pick for the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, I got the same guy, Christian Wilkins
nice.
from Clemson. Minka definitely would have been here, but I haven't liked many of Miami Dolphins picks the last few years. And they're in this weird spot. They haven't won a playoff game or had a top 10 pick since 2013. So they're not really getting those elite draft picks, those top 10 guys. They're just falling somewhere in the teens, which, you got to just got to try to get the best player that eventually falls to you. So Christian Wilkins, I think he was worthy of the pick at the time, but he was my number 4 defensive tackle that year behind Quinnen, Jeffrey Simmons, and then Ed Oliver, who we just mentioned. His production was great at Clemson. Like you said, 4-year starter, 40 tackles for a loss, 15 and a half sacks. I liked his ball get off. He was quick off the snap. His hustle never stopped and just had great movement for a big guy. On top of that, he was a 2-time team captain and won the academic Heisman. And, those are checking all the boxes, things that why I think he was worthy of that pick. But since entering the NFL, he's yet to flash. He's only produced 2 sacks and 3 tackles for a loss. So I don't think he's really hit his ceiling yet. I expect him to come back strong with this second-year coaching staff and see what they could put together. I know they've upgraded their DBs a lot the last 2 years. So they probably have one of the best cores in the NFL. So maybe that'll help with the coverage, make the quarterback hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and Christian Wilkins will be able to produce a little bit more next year.
Yeah, we'll definitely see for sure.
Yeah, one more honorable mention that I have was 2017 second-round pick Raekwon McMillan, the linebacker from Ohio State. That year, he was my number 3 inside linebacker. He was behind Reuben Foster and Zach Cunningham. And just like Wilkins, he checked a lot of the boxes that I look for. He had great production. His play speed was pretty good. He was hard-hitting. He set the tempo, and another team captain. So he played pretty well last year. He cracked 100 combined tackles for the first time. And like I said before, the Dolphins already have a great secondary. If Wilkins and the boys up front could put some pressure on the quarterbacks and plug up some holes, I think McMillan will be ready to shine.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So that brings us to the 6-time Super Bowl champion, New England Patriots. A couple of my honorable mentions. Oh, yeah. A couple of my honorable mentions. Somebody that I was actually high on in 2017. I liked their edge rusher out of Youngstown was Derek Rivers. I was a big fan of him. He just seemed like he had like the traits that everything. He had the traits that Bill Belichick look for in a Patriot.
What year was he?
Always 2017. He was round 3.
You got it.
Yeah.
I'm just looking back on my notes.
Gotcha. 2019. I liked N'Keal Harry, but he wasn't in my honorable mention. I think the guy I liked the best out of that year was actually Juwan Williams, cornerback out of Vanderbilt. Big guy, big press kind of dude. So was big fan of him. But my favorite draft choice overall for them was round 1, pick 31, and that was running back Sony Michel. I was a big fan of Sony Michel and watching him in the play at Georgia, especially with him being paired up with Nick Chubb. Although he was second on the depth chart, he still got a lot of burn. I know in 2017 when Jake Fromm was a true freshman there, he actually relied very, very heavily on the senior running backs of Chubb and Michel. He didn't really get his shine really until Nick Chubb actually got hurt in 2015 against Tennessee, and that's when Michel took over as a starter and ran for 145 yards that year. In 2017, that's when he got 840 yards, four rushing touchdowns to go along with 22 receptions and 149 reception yards as well as a receiving touchdown. I know he got actually 2018. The Bulldogs were Rose Bowl champions, and he was actually the Rose Bowl MVP of that team for sure. And I know with all the running backs entering in 2018 year, the Patriots had a plethora of running backs from James White, Rex Burkhead, him. So I think adding another one of those guys like Sony Michel was hoping give them another those defenses another wrinkle to think about, because they weren't too sure which running back they were going to get. So having that variety, kind of having that 3-headed monster back there was something that Belichick was looking for.
Yeah, but I didn't expect Sony Michel to be taken there. Like you said, he split the backfield a lot with guys. He only had 156 attempts that year and 9 receptions, which is pretty low, especially for a guy that's going to be taken that high. And another thing why it surprised me that the Patriots took him is he had one of the highest fumble rates out of all running backs that year, which, Bill Belichick does not tolerate fumbling. So he must have saw something in there where he knew he could fix it, because that has not been an issue at all since he's entered the NFL.
So in 2018, who would you rather pick in the first? I mean, I know you wouldn't have picked either in the first round, but who would you rather have, Sony Michel or Rashad Penny?
Definitely Michelle. I have Rashad Penny at my number 7 running back. I have Michelle at number 5. So I saw Rashad Penny as more of a kick returner,
Mm-hmm.
type. The first notes I have on him are good kick returner, good burst, follows his block, good cuts. The negatives I have on him: unreliable and pass block, upright, doesn't fall forward. So to me, that's more of a later round running back where, he can come in situational stuff, but he's not going to be your Nick Chubb type every down player that deserves that pick.
Yeah, in 2018, I'm pretty sure I had Nick Chubb as my number 1 running back.
Yeah. Nick Chubb I have at 4, and
Okay.
that's behind Saquon, Darius Geis, and probably a miss here, Ronald Jones, and then Chubb. So I had him at number 4.
All
Is
right. What
that it?
about
That
you
was your number
for
1?
the Patriots? Yeah, that's my favorite one, Sony Michel.
You got it. Two guys I want to mention. My favorite pick for the Patriots is Isaiah Wynn. He was their first round pick in 2018. The guard out of Georgia, another Georgia guy. So I just like the Dolphins. I haven't really liked many of their picks the last couple years, but Isaiah Wynn was my number 2 guard in the draft behind Quentin Nelson. He was taken at pick number 23, which is probably exactly where he belonged. But leaving Georgia, he was a smart, controlled pass blocker. The first time I really recognized him was at the Senior Bowl. He was getting a lot of hype there, just taking on some of the top talent. So that always puts a little flag in my mind to remind myself how good these guys could potentially be against pros. And his first year in the NFL, he got to work underneath Dante Scarnecchia. Actually, his first 2 years, who is considered the best O-line coach in the game. And he just recently retired this year, so hopefully Wynn could keep trending in the right direction and be a good starting player for the Patriots for the next couple years. The
Gotcha.
second guy that I have on here is Chase Winovich, who I think I was maybe a little bit higher on him than where he was taken. I remember just seeing him fall, and fall, but he was my number 10 edge rusher, but I had a second round grade on him. It was a pretty solid draft class that year, and Bill Belichick saw him falling each round, and he took him and, of course, used him to his strength. That's what he's known to do. So while his defensive stats in the NFL haven't been out of this world, he only had 5.5 sacks last year. I know he didn't start every game or was even in on every play. He's more of a situational pass rusher, but he also became like a special teams demon. He actually played more special team snaps last year than he did pure defensive snaps. So he just brings that hustle and attitude to the field where he's not going to give up or stop. He had a block punt in versus the Giants that pretty much changed the game and started them going in the right direction. I think he could step up his pass rushing skills next year. Just another year in the league, more experience, and I don't think he'll be an every down pass rusher, or even I don't think he's that good against the run. If they ran right at him, I think he'd probably get washed out. But for situational times, I think he's a perfect third and long defensive end that can get to the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Cause that pressure.
Yep, exactly. So that's all I have for New England.
All right, now time to move on to the New York Jets. To kind of get them out of the way, I'm going to talk about the 2018 draft choices real quick. The only person I was really high on beforehand was actually Perry Nicholson. He was a round 6 player chosen. So, I mean, I kind of had him going later around. I was high on him going in the third day. So he got chosen where I thought he was going to be. He's good depth piece, but he's not even on the team anymore. 2019, they had some pretty good players that I liked. They had Quinnen Williams. I know he's a shithead now, but Ja'Kai Polite, I
Yeah.
actually thought he was going to be way better. I liked Blake Cashman, the linebacker out of Minnesota, but I was actually pretty high on the round 4 choice, Trayvon Wesco out of West Virginia. I was a big fan of him. He was a receiving threat to go along with that team with Greg Jennings, David Stills, and Will Greer slinging it out there to him.
Yep.
But my favorite draft, actually, I was a big fan of their 2017 draft choice as well. I liked Elijah McGuire coming out, as well as Chad Henson, kind of a local guy around here, going receiver from Cal. I liked Marcus May a lot. He was one of my favorite safeties in that draft class, but my overall favorite draft choice in 2017. And then that's not just going for the Jets, but through the whole draft class, was safety Jamal Adams. I'm pretty sure that's probably yours too.
Yep.
Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. I mean, since entering the league, this kid's been a stud. He's already he's been a first team All Pro in 2019. His rookie year, he was, let's see here, he was, all rookie team. He's 2000, actually, he's 2018. He was a second team All Pro. He's a two-time Pro Bowler. In 2016, his stats at LSU, he had 76 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss. He even had 1 sack, an interception, and a forced fumble. Um, it's funny since we're, had this little project going on. Do you know how many career interceptions he actually has off the top of your head?
I don't. I'm going to guess he's been in the league since 2017. I'm going to guess 6.
He's only had 2.
2. Yeah, I know he doesn't really produce. He's more of a run stopper in the box type of guy.
Yeah,
That's where he plays the best. Not saying he can't do the other
no.
way, because he did do that at LSU. But yeah, I know his interceptions has been pretty low.
Yeah, that's it's pretty crazy. Because I was a big fan of him, and he was ball hawk flying all over the place over there at LSU. I know that I'd mentioned his past deflections, but yeah, like you said, he is definitely a run stopper, and they've used him. They've got creative with him, Greg Williams over there. Uh, you know, blitzing him and getting different ways to utilize Adams. Stat skills.
Yep.
And he actually has 12 sacks in his career. He had 6.5 last year. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
pretty crazy. So, definitely utilize them. And one thing that we're a big fan of studying players is, their family tree.
Yep.
And I know that beforehand I had no idea, and you brought it to my attention that you said his dad played in the league too as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Big bloodline. His dad played in the league, and I even think at LSU. So he was
Oh, okay.
he was born to play there. So I know he's a Texas kid. He was also my favorite player that the Jets have drafted the last couple years. I think he was my favorite player in the draft that year. So the couple reasons why I liked him coming out is he just showed it all at LSU, from strong safety, free safety, played a little bit of slot coverage. He was inside the box, run stuffer, and in college he actually was a ball hawk. Um, I know his freshman year, he was the first freshman to become a team captain, I think, in LSU's history. So that just shows you what type of leader he is. And now he's in the NFL. He hasn't really slowed down. You still see him being that leader. Every year he's trying to recruit guys to the Jets, and even though he wants to leave, I'm pretty sure he got guys like Le'Veon Bell and other
Mhm.
free agents on board. But he's just that constant leader. PFF ranked him as the number 2 safety in the league the last 2 years combined. So he's always up there producing at that all-pro level. And just like you said, with his sacks this year, he just produces at all levels of the field. You can put him anywhere, and he just makes an impact. He's one of those guys where I think the offense comes to the line, and they have to point out and know exactly where he's at, because he's liable to make a play. So this was a home run pick. They hit it on this one, so hopefully they could work out a long-term contract with him or even trade him, get some compensation that they want. But I don't know. Looks like a tough one for Jamal Adams.
Oh yeah, tough one for sure.
The last player that I wanted to mention that I liked was Nathan Shepard, 2018
Okay.
third-round pick from Fort Hays State. And,
Mm-hmm.
another guy that I saw flash at the Senior Bowl, he ended up moving up to my number 4 defensive tackle. And I just liked how powerful he had. And I even saw some quick movement, and he had good moves. And he just has not put it together yet in the NFL. Looking back at some of his stats, I mean, quite honestly, I have not seen him play in the NFL. He just hasn't had the opportunity or the production to show anything. So I don't know if it was, again, the competition, him coming out of Fort Hays State and just being shocked about the switch to the NFL, but he was a guy that I had higher hopes for. He just hasn't hit yet. But yeah, out of all these guys that you've mentioned uh, for this division, would you put a fifth round option on any of them? I could see a couple guys right now. Tre'Davious White, I would do.
Yeah.
Isaiah Wynn. I'd have to skip Christian Wilkins. I don't think I'd do it on him. And I know he'll probably leave before it happens, but Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
So those
Yeah, I
three
think so
guys.
too. Yeah, if he gets traded to any of those the list of 8 teams that he went to that he kind of put on his list,
Yeah.
uh, I think that he'll play those 2 years out and look for a new contract. I know safety isn't that expensive to use, but I mean one of those teams was actually the 49ers, which would be pretty fun to see.
Yep.
But he'd actually be pretty expensive, and the 49ers got a lot of players to play. Um,
He just wants to go
yeah,
to
I
a
agree with you.
contender. He just wants to go to a
Yeah.
contender, and most teams that are contending, they use up their cap space immediately, whether it be
For
on
sure.
one of these top flight quarterbacks or just building around a young quarterback. It's hard to cut out a big slice of the pie there.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you got anything else to add before we get on out of here?
No, I think that wraps it up for the AFC East. We're going to be tackling the AFC West coming up here next, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. We'll talk to you guys later. See ya.
All right, later.